I'm going to do another ballistics video. This time I'm going to talk a bit more about hollow point ammo. The reason I'm doing this is because a lot of people jump at the idea that, yes, I need to be carrying hollow points, but they don't necessarily understand why. So let's talk about the actual mechanics of what's going on, why this might be something desirable. Now, if you happen to study this stuff, this is not going to be anything new. If you've been following the podcast, if you follow primary and secondary posts, this is definitely nothing new. But what I do have in my hand are some examples. So I was going through some boxes and found a Magpul DACA pouch full of bullets that we fired in gel that we recovered, and I forgot I even had them. And so I was going through this box, opened up the pouch, and found all these expended rounds that mushroomed very nicely. Unfortunately, I don't recall exactly whether these were HSTs or gold dots. This is a 45 ACP. This is a 9mm. And I want to say that the 45 might have been a gold dot. I don't remember. Matter of fact, I probably could find out if I actually paid a little better attention, but it's beside the point. I'm talking about the overall performance of a jacketed hollow point. So if you have read a specific book that might talk about bullet wounds, there is a specific portion that is quoted quite frequently. As a matter of fact, Chuck Haggard is the first that I saw that was widely sharing this and sharing it often. And it's basically that a competent medical examiner can't tell the difference between the wound tracks from an expanded or unexpanded, I guess, but an expanded 45 ACP and expanded 9mm. That's an interesting thing to consider, because physically you see that there is a difference, but when we actually measure them, is the difference large enough to create a dramatic difference in the actual wounding? I'm not a medical doctor. But what I can do is I can tell you what I've learned from talking to ballistics experts. I can tell you what I've learned from medical doctors. I can tell you what I learned from reading specific books. Because also here is an unexpanded, actually it's not even, it's a full metal jacket. Hopefully it is not going to expand. 9mm. So let's compare the two. Now the surface areas, obviously on the front of them, are going to be very different. Because the jacketed hollow point has a rounded surface, that the penetrating portion is a rounded tip. What it's going to do is basically push its way through, and essentially it causes skin, flesh to expand as the bullet penetrates, and then it retracts. The skin does, the bullet doesn't. Though mentally, I just went on a tangent, and I'm not going to go there. It was about the bullets retracting after we're not going to go there. But the mechanism of the wounding is it is pushing, it's tearing, it's crushing. But because of the rounded tip, think about aerodynamics and how things tend to go around a rounded surface. This is more aerodynamic. It's going to flow through flesh, air, gel, easier. Now compare it to this, where you have this flat surface. That's not going to travel quite as easily. This is resistance. Matter of fact, this is also cutting. This is crushing. What's happening with this expanded hollow point is because of this greater frontal surface area, it's slowing down. This is what controls the overall penetration. So in order for us to have effective rounds on target, first off, we need to hit what we are aiming at. We also need to know what to aim at. There are specific portions, just hits aren't enough. So if our hits are going in the direction of the needed areas, or of the areas that need to be struck, upper heart areas, maybe brainstem areas, after that, it needs sufficient penetration to reach and disrupt those organs. So you don't have an issue with that with the jacketed hollow point. Jacketed hollow point absolutely is not only as long as it's if this round is going to where it needs to go, it's going to be effective. It's going to go right through whatever you're shooting at, and it might go through then the person, and then over penetration is the issue. Whereas our expanded hollow point, it creates sufficient resistance to decelerate. It's not an energy dump. It is not an energy dump. It is deceleration because of the resistance. Same with if this were a lighter, if this were a 32 or 380, because of the lack of energy behind it, the deceleration, it will cause it to slow down and eventually stop. So this flat surface is essentially acting like a parachute. And the coolest part is companies like Federal, Spear, so our gold dots, our HSTs, they found that magic blend, that balance where you have sufficient velocity to go through into someone and not have sufficient velocity exiting to create a threat or a danger to people behind that person that's shot. So essentially, if this were shot in a person, most likely where you would find this is inside their clothing on the other side, opposite of the entry wound, or you would find it just inside the skin on the opposite side of the entry wound. That's pretty cool. But more importantly, the hollow point is creating a much more defined cutting, crushing area. And it's not so much the width of it, but it's a flat face, or a flatter face than a full metal jacket. So let's compare it to a fired, there we go. Hopefully you can see, a wad cutter. So wad cutters have this flat face. That on tissue is far more effective in creating a much more defined primary wound channel. So if you compare these two surfaces, which one's going to glide through media easier and which one is going to have more resistance? And clearly, the full metal jacket with that rounded nose is going to sail through things with so much more ease, with less resistance. And this flat, awesome wad cutter is going to be more destructive. And and I've talked about this in other videos, that flat 90-degree angle is a meat plat. Pronounced something like that. I've talked about it in other videos. So basically, that's the gist of it. So what you're getting out of a jacketed hollow point is controlled penetration, but also you're having a more defined crush cut area. And it's not necessarily because it's wider, it's because it's much more of a distinct flat edge that's creating more resistance than our typical full metal jacket, which is rounded. Hopefully that makes sense. To me, it does. But that's really the gist of it. The larger surface area that might be creating a slightly larger wound channel, that's a happy side effect. So fluted solids have, basically you have these machined areas that are cut out the sides. And that additional surface area in those sides, those flutes, are creating that additional wounding, or that, that additional resistance, which controls the overall penetration. So if you're living in one of those areas where you can't carry a jacketed hollow point, well, obviously any of the pseudo jacketed hollow points were with the plastic tip, that could be a solution, but so would a fluted solid. And with those fluted solids, it's a amazing technology. It's an amazing idea of applying that. And it's actively and efficiently controlling that. Depending on the design, it should be controlling that overall penetration, because we don't want the rounds to be leaving the body that we shoot into. But we don't necessarily want it. Let me back up. We don't want it to leave the body with sufficient velocity to injure people behind the threat or the target. We don't necessarily, though, also want the bullets to stop in the body. Now, if they stop inside the skin on the other side, that's awesome. That's great. But we need to be able to disrupt those. And I'm talking handguns here. We need to disrupt those vital organs. Vital organs being the heart, being the central nervous system, brainstem, brain, things like that. As I said in another video, the shots that are supposed to upset the heart, the whole intention of that is to stop the blood flow to the brain. That's all. Because just by taking out a heart, that's not the end result we're looking for. We're looking to affect the overall the overall system by taking out the brain, by removing the blood supply. Great stuff. Really, really enjoy this stuff. Hopefully you can tell. I definitely have an enthusiasm for this. And the more I have these conversations with the people in the know, the more I have these podcasts, the more I have these texts, phone calls, and whatnot, the more I come away with so much more better understanding. And let me just tell you how great it is to have those types of people, the Buford Boones, the Gary Roberts, Sherman House, Chuck Haggard. I know for a fact I'm missing people. There are more than Mark Fricke's, but having these people available to help me understand. And then also they're on the podcast. Some of them are on the podcast to help explain as well for you, the listener or the viewer. But yeah, for me, it's been so awesome to learn about this and to have such a better understanding. And I look back at how I was when I first started, having no idea about this, just knowing, I need to get jacketed hollow points. Well, why? And this video hopefully will explain it for you. So that's all. We'll talk to you later.